want me to introduce this whole thing, or?
Yeah, why don't you?
This is my idea, I guess.
Yeah.
I have to take responsibility. Hello and greetings. Welcome, everyone. Hi. How's Big Bad Con going for y'all? It's all right. Thumbs up. I'm hearing some good stuff. Very nice. Hi. Big Bad Academy is this thing that Dr. Friedman and Evan put on together. And we are friends of theirs, apparently. So they've told us. And I'm liable to believe them. And as such, we're kind of doing adjacent elements to it that are also academic in nature. Last year I presented with Dr. Friedman about my class, and it was a lot of fun, and that kind of got her thinking that maybe we should do more of this. People seem to enjoy it. We actually had a full house for it last year and such like that, so it's a good time. But Emily Friedman hooked me up with this fine person. Who has a name? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Emily Kugler. I'm also an Emily.
All the Emily. In library sciences, everyone's named either Liz or Sarah.
Yep.
I've learned. Yeah, it's true, dude. But welcome to our panel titled "I Can Play That, I Can Be That," looking at tabletop role-playing games and their usage in university classrooms, specifically at universities that serve historically underserved populations. We'll say. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, that's a good way of
That's a good way of putting it. And I'm John Bultena. I'm from. I guess we're going to introduce ourselves here. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. You're
okay.
You're going to see here.
All right.
I'll click through it here for you.
You'll click through it for me. Okay, great.
If I can get my thing to. Oh, let's see here. Ah, there it goes. Okay, cool.
Ooh, okay. Hi, I'm Emily Kugler. I am an associate professor of literature and writing, which we just renamed our department, so I'm trying to remember that and future-proof it, at Howard University. I am sometimes seen on the YouTube channel Critical Prof, and sometimes I'm just editing things, which I like sometimes more than being on camera. But yeah, so basically that's who I am, and in this conversation we want to take up just a little bit of time, but leave it open for a lot of conversation. So can we go to...
Yeah, we can keep on moving here.
Yeah.
The next up is this guy here with his dome. Hi, I'm John Bultena. I'm a continuing lecturer at the Merit Writing Program at the University of California, Merced. I am also a part-time academic librarian when it does happen. Hasn't happened for about a year though, but that's all right. I have a full-time job, so I don't need them. And I'm also the game master of Abraxas Precipice. It's the Expanse role-playing game actual play. We've been doing it for 3.5 years. I have a lot of fun with it. And finally, I'm also the proprietor of Cauldron Tower, which is my brand production company. I don't know what the hell I call it. It's just whatever I do. I slap that label on it. And I want to mention one thing before we move on. Emily and I did not know this when I was put together with Emily, but we are both from the Central Valley of California. Yes. Here. You're from Clovis. I grew up in Merced. And we have to talk about that and bond about that at some point, because it's a really interesting history.
That is an interesting history, and that was a lot of school events between like Merced and Madera and Fresno.
I have a lot of Central Valley stories.
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun. So all right, let's move on. Emily, I'm going to hand this over to you here.
Okay, excellent.
Here is your fine slides.
Okay.
And I'll try to...
And I'll look at my fine slides too. Okay, so a little bit more about me. So as you mentioned, K through 12, public schools, Clovis Unified School District, that's in Fresno County. I got my bachelor's at Scripps Women's College in Claremont, California. I got my PhD at UC San Diego. Then a lot of stuff happened. And I'm now an associate professor at Howard University in Washington, D.C. You know, the normal trajectory that geography clearly was pointing out. Okay, so what is an HBCU? So Howard is a HBCU. This is a historically black college and university. So most of these were founded between Reconstruction and then before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There are some before that. There are not any after that. After that, you are not considered historically so, because it's post-1964, and there's other reasons for that too. Most of these are located in the southeast.
And, hit the button, you're good. Oh,
okay, good.
There it goes. Go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so again, this is within the scheme of the United States' incredibly overpriced higher education. Tuition is relatively affordable, and in recent years there has been a lot of attraction. There have been a lot of non-black students who have applied and are growing populations at different institutions. here. Okay, so, but, and there's a couple other things to bring up. Like, so while overall enrollment in colleges have gone down recently, HBCUs have actually been doing a little bit better and being more attractive. I will say in terms of Howard, we did see an uptick and then from then on increased student body enrollment, not just in terms of applications, but how many people got in and then still came after 2016. So we can think about sort of what was happening and why Black students were like, this might be a better space to be in. This might be a safer space to be in, especially when Trump was in office.
Oh, I'll talk about that.
Yep. Okay, a little bit about Howard. I'm not going to go through all of this, but the important thing that this is sort of right after the Civil War. It's part of the Freedmen's Bureau being set up. It was co-ed and racially integrated from day one. One of the misconceptions I often get when people find out I work at an HBCU is that they feel it's discriminatory. And then I remind them that it wasn't like Harvard was letting in a bunch of Black students at the time. It wasn't like it wasn't like the HBCUs were turning people away. It was the white institutions that the Ivies didn't start out as like, oh, look how diverse we are. So that's one thing that comes up with this. But in terms of, I'm going to double check my numbers on this. So we have like a reasonable sized undergraduate and graduate populations. And I want to think about, we represent 53 states and territories. We represent 53 different nations. I don't know how long we're going to keep that nice numbers even and working out, but I like it for presentations. And most of the students are enrolled full-time. So when you think about campuses, some are commuter campuses, some are ones that usually have part-time. For the most part, we have students who are there full-time. We don't have enough campus housing for them to be on campus, but living in the area and coming together that way. Okay, these are a little bit of stats, but you don't need to memorize those because then I go into this. I just want to give a sense of where this sort of falls. And I don't know that graduation rates and price are not everything, but if you think about it, so undergraduate tuition for Howard is about $30,000. If you went to San Francisco State University, the State University, if you're in state, it's pretty good. If you then go to UC Berkeley, right, price is also pretty good, but again, if we bring up acceptance rates going through this, if you went to Stanford, the price goes up incredibly, but I wanted to sort of bring up how both Howard and UC Berkeley, so taking like one of our state institutions here, I'm still talking as a Californian, I guess, no matter how long I'm in the East Coast, right, that in terms of price and graduation rate, you're competing with private schools that are often much better funded. Okay, so another thing sometimes people bring up to me is that they're shocked that there could be any place that was majority Black, which I find very weird. But this is sort of a racial breakdown of our population. This is mirrored a lot with our faculty as well, sort of thinking about who's represented. And compared to other universities, if you are looking at this, the red is HBCUs, the red is Howard, and the other ones are other universities. And so the big one is like in terms of Black enrollment. So if you think about where students of color are being enrolled in other places, the one on the far left is white. You could see that actually in terms of serving not just Black populations, but in general, there is a higher diversity, which we'll talk a little bit about Merced too. Again, this is a question of what counts as diversity. There's a sense that sometimes, again, this is the last misconception I'll get of my 3 common misconceptions when people decide to tell me about what it's like at Howard. Is that the other thing people often say to me is that it's not diverse. In fact, if you go to some college ranking sites, they're like, this is a very undiverse school. Look how few white people they have. And they're like, people, both schools value diversity, but not Howard. But the thing is, what is diversity? We are 66 out of 2,100 when it comes to geographic diversity at colleges and universities in the U.S. 98% of our students come from out of state. Almost 10% come from out of the country. Like it is a diverse population. And while there's a shared racial, ethnic background, what that means based on where you're from changes that quite a bit. So this is just me forward,
Okay.
on age and forward. Thank you for these animations.
Yeah.
And just to give a sense, though, we also are living in what's called a minority majority city-state, because we aren't a state in the District of Columbia. And recently, there was less of a black majority because our Latino Hispanic populations are rising, going through. So when you're in DC, you have what's already even though most of our students don't come from DC, they are still reflecting some of the demography of it. We have also had in recent years around us, and this is something a lot of universities need to deal with, what happens when you have rising gentrification. We've had a huge influx of people recently, and they're rich. And they are willing to pay like $3,000 for a studio apartment if it's in the right neighborhood. And their idea of right neighborhood is rapidly expanding. And so there's a sense, too, of what's happening to the city. So the college is both, historically black institutions are supposed to also serve their communities, and that's been one of Howard's roles, especially in its running of the hospital in the area. And this idea of, yes, we're here, and yes, a lot of people are from outside DC, but what do we owe to our community as people are being pushed out? And what role will we play in that? So in my classrooms, how I teach games is often as adaptations, receptions. I teach it almost like as I would any film or novel or modernization that would go through. I'm particularly interested in, if anyone's seen my work with M. Friedman, on how the Regency is represented both in TTRPGs and in video games, these assumptions people have about gender, race, and sexuality in the past, and how that's often molded by other media they've consumed versus historical research. And I've listed a few things that I've included in my classes going forward. But what I really want to talk about and what's become more of my focus in here. So when I teach games, it's not a specifically game studies class. It's the thing I sneak in because I'm like, well, we're reading Frankenstein, so we're also going to play the Wanderer. Well, we're reading Jane Austen. We're also, have you heard of a designer named Spiral Atlas? By the way, look up Spiral Atlas. They are wonderful. So that's what happens. I usually sort of sneak it in. We're building a digital humanities program, and we're hoping to bring in some game studies with that. But what I have become more involved with lately is the Howard University Gaming Society that was founded in 2021. Yes, that's the correct one. So HUGS, Howard University Gaming Studies, came out in part.
Lucky.
Yeah, it's so good.
You got lucky with that.
This came out of part because we had an esports team, and a lot of people who are interested in gaming were like, I don't particularly want to do esports, but I would like a space for games, both tabletop, video, all sorts of things. And another part about them is that they explicitly wanted this to be a queer, femme-friendly space. And that's explicitly who they're reaching out to. So right now, we, including my colleague, graduate student Austin Anderson there, who is speaking tomorrow, we're trying to work on grants to support them and in part build like an open educational resource that can highlight games and game studies that are centered around BIPOC and queer communities. We are working with the students to not just support the community that they want to build there, but to also serve as a model for other people expanding that community both locally and online. And this is something that we really value with it. So we are trying to, in a way of trying to get this I'm trying to sneak in game studies into the Digital Humanities Initiative. The Digital Humanities is trying to sneak in through the Data Science Initiative. And through that, we think we will have something to go forward. And something about our data science program is its emphasis on social justice, is that data science, computer studies, these are not value neutral things, that there is an ethical dimension to go into this. That's an image that's from an upcoming conference that one of my colleagues is hosting at the African American Smithsonian. And again, the mission of this center is to promote things. And this is an image of some of the digital projects they've been working on, which are often about, this is from specifically the Black Lit, or the Black Lit Network Project, which is looking at books by Black authors and thinking about there's some that do network graphs of how they connect to each other in terms of references. There are other visualizations of the text, geographic, and this idea of how can we use data science tools to further discuss literature, especially literature that's potentially been underserved in the area. So at Howard, we're in this space where a lot of it's coming in from, I would say, a theoretical and political level, and we're trying to, how do we manifest in the classroom? What's interesting, I think, is that we've been able to manifest in the community easier than getting course approval and finding a place within the institution, finding a subject line for a course number to where do we put in game studies. But what I'm hopeful about is, regardless of when we finally do that, and wherever it's housed, we know that students can come in and they will be eager to talk about race and gender and sexuality and other issues that I care a lot about as a scholar. And so that's one of the blessings of being at a diverse institution.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Hi. Y'all ready? Cool. So this is my follow-up from last year called Role for Research. Now, I'm going to provide a little context setting up here, but Role for Research, or tabletop role-playing games for developing research capabilities in underserved university populations. That's a more technical title, and then I have my own title that I always have to make my laughing title about my inside joke, which is, or how I built my own gilded cage. Real quick off the bat, I want to give you guys an example of something I do with my students. There's a QR code. You're welcome to use it. Take a look at the survey. This is something I do with my students. You can kind of play around with it, take a look at it, get an idea of what we kind of think about and how I assess my students, and we'll come back to that in a moment here. But what it is that I work at University of California, Merced, and I teach in the writing program, mostly like engineering writing, but we have a general education program there that's a newer version of what we had beforehand, but it's called Spark. And it's an elaborate thing. I'm moving the slides, so I got to move on. And the title of my course is Dungeons & Dragons Skills IRL, and there is a question mark in the title of the class. They actually get the question mark on their transcript.
That's excellent.
More transcripts need question marks. This is that, and those words appear on their transcript.
Yeah.
I've actually verified it. I had a student. I have evidence. And what this is it began back in 2020. So I've been teaching this for 5 years now. It's evolved a bit here and there, some shifts in what I've been handling with it. It is part of our Spark General Education courses. Spark is based around the idea that students, freshmen especially, and we'll talk about what the freshman classes look like, need to kind of learn how to cultivate curiosity. They're used to an environment K-12 where curiosity and such is, well, probably oftentimes squashed or very, very focused and directed, not really given the breadth that they could utilize. And in these classes, they're given access to an expert. So we actually have one called Central Valley Stories. It's about collecting stories for the Central Valley. Something I think you should.
Someone you might want to talk to.
We're networking here, guys. Give us a sec.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's one of my buddies did one on skateboard culture. There's one about like sports and analytics and like mathematics and sports, all kinds of stuff, and the like. However, though, I am in a weird position, and the reason why is because mine blew up in popularity. And I have a lot of my students, they actually started they trace our success of students, like graduation rates from like what classes they've taken. And it turns out I'm pretty good at this apparently somehow, whether I like it or not. And so now my contract with the UC is currently, I teach nothing but this. I teach 3 sections a semester with 30 students in each semester. all I do is this. This is the gilded cage I created. It was my dream to make it, and I have it. And now I'm like, shit. All right, I guess. What are you doing this semester, John? You just asked me that. It was like a year ago. Oh, okay, yeah. Let me give you some context about UC Merced. We're new, man. We opened up in 2005. We were the first research university built in the 21st century. We beat Madeira for a good school. Thank you. But the school is it's still pretty new. We're only hovering about 8,500 students right now. We were hoping to have 10K by 2020, but something happened, I guess. Our population is interesting and unique. One part of it is that 65% of our students are first generation. I'm going to be frank with you, this number's low for us right now. Last year was 70. I guess it's good and bad that number's dropping, like in a sense that like it's gonna, if you do have more, you're eventually gonna get rid of everyone that doesn't have a college education at some point. So self-extinction is a goal here, I suppose. But that's a very high percentage rate. If you look at a lot of other schools, it's like 10%. We are a federally designated HSI, so Hispanic Serving Institution. Currently, we're at 50% of our students are Hispanic. To have that designation, you have to have 25%. This number too is low. Last year was 57%. It's gone down a bit. A number that's gone up though is our NPC, I think is how you pronounce it, but it's Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander Serving Institute. I got it memorized this week. I'm very proud of myself. That is a long acronym, guys. I'm sorry, that's a long acronym. Face it, that's a long acronym. But we're 22% Asian. And recently, and this is like the big thing where the school paid money to put on the side of buildings at the school, for God's sakes. We're also one of the top schools for social mobility. And I cite that because we were number 1 according to the Wall Street Journal for social mobility. And we were number 3 according to U.S. News reports. So when I say we're top for, I'm not making it up. That tells me we're doing something right? So our students tend to do better than their parents did, and go on to do good things and great things and have success in that regard. So that's a big attraction of our school. Now, okay, so I'm going to talk about tabletop role-playing games. And what I wanted to share with you is the results of the survey I showed you guys. If you look at the survey, I'm going to show you what my students, which this semester was supposed to be, I only had 88 show on the first day, so the 88 students took it out of the 90, so 2 people were missing, is given day 1, and I give them this survey before I even tell them my name. They're surprisingly malleable when you stand in front of the class and tell them to start barking orders at them. It's the K-12 in them coming out. But the first question I ask them is, on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being not at all, 7 being intricately familiar, how much experience do you have with tabletop role-playing games? And you can see that the majority are on they go on this side. The most interesting part is these guys, the 3 here that said they're intricately familiar, because I can guarantee you if I did the survey again with them, they'd be like, oh, no. Because I show them some real shit, and they're like, holy fuck. And it's kind of an interesting idea, but like, what does that mean to be intricately familiar? And so it's kind of a fun thing. Just so a lot of them don't have experience with it. They're not sure what it is. They might have seen it on TV or never heard of it, or it. And I'll be honest with you guys, like, did this class just work through your schedule? Cool. I asked how many of them had played Dungeons & Dragons before, any edition. 27.3% said they had. Okay, so about a quarter. I then asked them, have you played other games? 10% said they had. Then I asked them my favorite question here. This is my favorite question. We saw in the survey, this is my favorite question to ask people. What came first, video games or tabletop role-playing games? And 25% got it right, which is they said video games came first. They predate tabletop role-playing games by almost about a decade. If you go look at Space Wars and such. But exactly a quarter of them got that right. And it's kind of interesting because we talk about the idea of what we think about history.
Yeah.
And trying to like get them to think through this kind of stuff. And actually one of the comments I've been getting from students that started doing research was like, so this is, Mr. Bultena, I understand we're studying history, but like, these people we're looking at, they're still alive. Is that history? What? Okay, so they have such a narrow perspective on like what history can be. You're living it, baby. And then I asked them, are you aware of the Satanic Panic in the United States? And about 27% say yes. Just awareness of it. Really interesting. So I'm looking at a population that knows nothing about this topic largely, has no familiarity with it. And they get worried that I don't know about this stuff. I'm like, don't worry about it, guys. I'll see you through. It's a freshman class. I understand. I'm good at this. Trust me. And then they make their first mistake and trust me. So how do I get these kids to actually like engage in it? Well, I do it through a few ways. One is content. We do a common read. We read Dangerous Games by Dr. Joseph Laycock from University of Texas, Austin. We read this for a few reasons. One, it provides a pretty good history of tabletop role-playing games very briefly, enough for us to operate. The other thing about it too is that this is published by the University of California Press, so all my students can get access to it for free. Unlimited access. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Cuts down on cost. There's an audiobook now. Some of them go and listen to it on YouTube. I tell them I don't care how you get access to it, but you can't complain to me that you don't have the book, because there's a free PDF I linked to in the syllabus, guys. Like, I don't know what else you want me to do for you. But one of the ways I get them really interested in this topic, and this is, this might sound a little sexist, because it really appeals to the women in the class. I say, we're going to talk about true crime. And holy shit, they're like, what? True crime? I'm like, yeah, I know your Spotify list looks like. And they love true crime stories. And so I said, we're going to talk about some of the satanic panic stories, and they look forward to that. They hear about that. But people love true crime right now. The other thing I do to reach them is I look at their experiences. So I try to draw on their own backgrounds. What are some elements that you've had problems with or issues that you're concerned about? I can't even begin to go into it because it's so diverse, but a big thing is mental health. A lot of them too are interested in moral panics we talk about somewhat. I mean, you could argue, right? I don't think you really can argue. I think it's almost a fact. But immigration is a moral panic for people in this country right now. There's a moral obligation to do something. And I ask them to pull in their personal backgrounds and also fields of study. So whatever you're into, we can find some way to apply it with tabletop role-playing games. And the last one is kind of my unique take on it, which my students seem to like the way I phrase this because they agreed to it, is I like to get into this thing I like to call outrage via absurdity. And they get, because we read about satanic panic and the stuff that like the moral entrepreneurs write about this stuff, and like we're like, what the hell? What are you doing? What? And that kind of WTF, outrage, how absurd this is kind of fun and gets us motivated to continue on it. So how do I get a base knowledge of them? How do I get them at a base level? Well, we look at what are tabletop role-playing games. And I do this through two ways, really. One is a demo game. We actually play Dungeon Crawl Classics because it's really easy to pick up, and it works well with a big group. If you play the funnel where you have like 30 characters go in and maybe 5 walk out, that's what we do. We also look at formal definitions like in Dangerous Games. And we also look at the history, the prehistory of these games, like where they come from. Nothing comes out of nothingness. We also examine materials. Some of these are peer-reviewed, such as Dangerous Games, but we started getting more into articles. You probably saw this article from the Marshall Project, great article. Students love this article. I can tell you right now that the local federal penitentiary that's not too far from the school, riffs. They love riffs. For better or for worse, the federal penitentiary people love riffs. And we also watch videos. We watched this People Make Games video about war games, which is fantastic. Look at like what's going on contemporaneously. We've worked with Rascal News a little bit here to try to get access to articles to have the students read, try to get them aware of it. But the other source we use too has been actual game books. So I've actually been assembling a library in my office that students can use. All these books were sent to me by Renegade Studios for students to utilize. Students like they're doing a research thing about Vampire the Masquerade. I'm like, there's an actual book you can look at that's like an authority on what Vampire the Masquerade is. It's called the core book Vampire the Masquerade. And they're like, oh, I can actually look at that. I'm like, yeah, you don't have to read articles. You can actually get the book and hold it in your hand and get some ideas. And they check these out, and the library is growing. There's also academic texts in there. So I have some stuff from people that are at this convention right now, different like anthologies, other books, and some graphic novels about the topic. Whatever I can get my hands on that's I can afford, I will put in there. But what am I doing here? Well, the goal of my class is to cultivate their curiosity, or as someone who got paid way too much money to that titled the class to spark their curiosity. Someone got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to come up with that name, and I hope they're burning in hell. But what do they really do? Well, so researchers, if you think about it, especially initially, these students come from a first generation. They don't know a lot about what that looks like. They're not really sure. They've seen college and movies, God forbid. What do we do? Well, a lot of research, one thing they do initially is they summarize topics. They kind of go through and get an idea of what's out there and see like, okay, let's kind of put it consolidated, get it kind of focused. The other thing you do too as a researcher is you foster your curiosity. You keep on thinking the questions, you keep on asking the questions, you keep on pursuing the questions, narrowing them in, seeing where they kind of dead end or maybe where they can open up, and finding who else is asking those questions. We actually do interviews with professionals. I have a huge list now of people we've spoken to. I've had people come to campus this semester. Actually, this week we're speaking to Marcy Brown from the Mycelium Youth Network here, and then we're speaking to Ned Donovan from Counterparty. And it's fun to talk to people in the actual field that are making money and working on this stuff to see like what actually goes on. What is it actually like to work in this field? And then finally, they share their research questions with each other. So they create a community inside the class where we present with each other and kind of show what we're doing. We don't just, research in our rooms alone by ourselves like I did. We actually get out to the community, become part of the greater community, and build all that up. All right. So now here's kind of where I'm at, and this is where the cage gets more golden, more polished. So one of the problems we had at UC Merced is we have students who have flat out not come to the school. And when we ask them, why didn't you attend, right? We ask that, maybe they got to another school, stuff happens, right? But one of the reasons they've been saying, and it's parents that have this answer, well, your school doesn't have an honors program, so it must suck. So we have our honors program, and we are in the inaugural year of it with 60 students in the cohort total. And as such, they have to take a Sparks seminar. Well, I got elected to do the Sparks Honors Dungeons & Dragons course. So I am teaching Honors D&D next semester. Yes, and there will be an H next to the question mark, which I'm really curious what that looks like. So the inaugural track right now is kicking off. The other ones are doing, I think the current Spark they're doing is an engineering kind of called Inclusive Innovation. And then but I'm doing the honors in spring with 30 students. I'm pretty excited about that. But what the question was is I was developing this summer with a big program of pedagogy at the school, is what would honors of this look like? Well, I came up with this phrase, which is a sustained project that reaches the greater university community. So we don't want honors to be more work. We want it to be different work. And the difference is here is that instead of the community being in the class, the community extends beyond the class into the university community. So what does that look like? Well, it could be a research proposal that could actually be implemented. It could be a publication. This could be an academic paper or even a game or a supplement for a game. I've been talking to some people about even having formal playtest groups that develop playtest material, that actually playtest the games and give reports of playtests. An event. When I talked to the head of our honors program about it, I said event. She's like, what do you mean by event? And I was like, I don't know, maybe a one-day mini Ren Fair on campus. And she lost her mind. And I was like, yeah, I know, I had that idea in my head the whole time. We Ren Fair, yeah. So that's kind of what we're looking at, is to have something that goes beyond just the class, and the students have to do this by the end of the semester, starting from the beginning. It has to be a group project, so they're not doing it individually. I'm not going to ask one kid to run a Ren Fair. That's cruel. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. And so just to recap, what I do is I manifest interest. I then enable a working knowledge of the field, or whatever topic is, and then I provide opportunity for them to pursue that interest. And that's kind of what I do right now, and it's the gilded cage I've created for myself.